I have the great honor and privilege to be with Sahana today. And Sahana, I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive in deeper. So welcome.
Thank you, Sai. Thank you for setting up this conversation. Thank you for creating this space between us where we can co-create something as we talk, as we uh, as we see what emerges through this conversation. So thank you very much. A little about myself. I had a fairly ordinary, when I say ordinary, quote unquote, given that millions of people now world over are losing their jobs. So I hesitate to use the word ordinary because right now ordinary seems very welcome. Uh, so I had a great corporate career, quote unquote again, and which I left 4 years back. So I've been in the corporate space for about close to 20 years, mostly, not mostly, almost exclusively in the space of people and capability development, starting with instructional design, learning and development, organization development, coaching, facilitation, seeing how organizations learn, people learn, systems learn. And that I think triggered my passion about uh, driving my own learning and uh, also as a facilitator, how could I create and co-create and hold space for people to tap into their own deepest potential. And as I explored that space and dived deeper into what was really pulling me forward, uh, I also discovered maybe approximately 6, 7 years back, I discovered the space of a different way of organizing, a different way of interacting. And I'm talking about beyond social media, which I discovered prior to that, and where I really enjoy interacting in global online communities, online platforms, using social media as a great self-driven learning tool, and all of that. But after a couple of years later, what was really bugging me, if I should say, is how organizations are mostly organized in this world, in the post-industrial era, through command, control, hierarchy, striving for predictability in a largely unpredictable world, looking at things in a very mechanistic, linear, profit-driven fashion, and all of those multiple facets were bothering me, and I couldn't quite connect the dots then. That what is really not gelling. I had this lovely job, and I was traveling the world. I was really, from a career wise, I had nothing to complain about. But there was this, like, it felt like I was leading parallel lives. One inside the organization, playing a role that was defined by the organization, doing certain things which gave me joy but not really fulfilled me, and one outside of the organization where I felt that this was a living world, a living planet. We are co-creators and participators on this planet in creating our own lives. And so that mechanistic world of organizations and the real living world was really not gelling, and I felt very incoherent, felt very out of sync with myself. And as days progressed and as years progressed, I deep dived into things like Theory U, Otto Scharmer's, and the whole MIT School of Thinking, Joseph Jarosky's synchronicities, source were great drivers in my own thinking, Margaret Wheatley's work, Joanna Macy's work. And, and then maybe about 4 years back, I stumbled onto this whole school of thinking, regenerative businesses, regenerative futures, Daniel Wall, Joe Brewer, Jordan Hall, and it was like, it was like a different universe opening. It was like, here is my tribe. Here are people staying, and I'm not alone, not just thinking something which it's there, people are talking about. And that's when I really went up to my boss and I told him very honestly that, I was not doing justice to my work because I wasn't doing it wholeheartedly, which is not fair to the organization, to the role, or to myself, and even to him. So I left my job 4 years back to really deep dive, to really uh, go through what was that. It was like pulling me forward almost inexorably. It was something I just could not do. And as I went on that journey, I realized that it was difficult. The other path had been easier. This was way more difficult, but it was strangely fulfilling. I woke up each day. I finished my whatever work I had to do at home, and finished my housework and stuff. And I really looked forward to reading that blog, reading Charles Eisenstein, or listening to listening to this conversation on Rebel Wisdom or Daniel Schmachtenberger. And I was like, wow, here are these people talking my language. Here are these people thinking and saying what I wanted to think and say, only doing it so much better than I can do. And so I dived deeper. And I realized it's not a cognitive journey. It's an inner work. It's an inner journey as much as an external journey. So for a couple of years, I stopped writing. In the sense, I stopped writing on any public platform, and I started reflective journaling, uh, doing my own journaling, and sort of doing my morning pages, and call it what you will. So I went through that whole exploration of what was happening inside of me as I went through this journey. And I think, and of course, as my mentors, I had tremendous mentors, people I've never met, but whose books just guided me on this journey. And it was almost like those books were calling me to be read. I had no plan. I didn't know what to read, but they would just appear. If I may say, the synchronicity. The universe helped me tremendously. So, and I started meeting your kind of people, our kind of people, having these kinds of conversations, reading Parker Palmer, reading, all kinds of stuff that really, really guided me on this journey. So they were my wayfinders, my coaches, my mentors, my facilitators. And collectively, I think that they held space for me to be where I am.
Beautifully expressed. And we do it all through such partnership. We coach each other, we mentor each other as human beings. There's a few things I really want to call out in what you described, and have you offer a perspective. There, as you said it, there's I'm going to use the word sort of a void or an emptiness that we feel like we're living dual lives even at times. And if we look at what's happened now with the crisis, it's as if now the world at large is confronting that emptiness, and some are waking to it, and some are perhaps not waking to it, but remaining in their slumber. Any thoughts kind of from that broad picture as to what you see happening? Are people waking up? Are they not waking up? And your thoughts there?
Beautiful question, Sai. Great question, because this is something that for the past 4 months, 3 months, when since this pandemic hit the world at large, that I've been really, really not only pondering over, trying to live this question. Like Rainer Mario Rilke said, live into the question. That's what I've been trying to do. So my feeling is, and this is what I feel. My feeling is that the whole world is in a liminal space. So that in between space that individuals felt, individuals like us, and we tried to sort of facilitate, coach ourselves through it. It's now like the whole world is in an in between space. The old stories, metaphors, narratives are no longer working for us. They are no longer helping us to make sense of what is happening today at all. So, and the thing is that things have fallen apart. The center cannot hold. And like Yeats wrote, mere anarchy is just on the world. And very strangely, I don't know whether to take it as a message, he wrote this in 1920, exactly 100 years ago. So the world fell apart then after World War One. And now the world is falling apart again, and the stories are no longer making sense. The stories of separation, the stories driven by competition, profit, exclusivity, economics, the stories of, just privilege, the stories driven by power are no longer making sense. So is the world ready to step into the new stories? We don't know. But I think many people are waking up to the fact that we need new stories, new metaphors, new narratives to hold and be compasses for us to guide ourselves into a future that's thrivable, regenerative, that works for all, that is not for the exclusive few sitting in the seats of power, but a world that truly works for all, a world that's anti fragile, that is resilient, that is beyond resilient, that is regenerative. And as I think about this, is the world ready? I think pockets of people really ready. In fact, they have been, mm, I would, they have been messengers, harbingers, and they've been asking us collectively to think of different stories. Uh, Whereas large part of the world is still blind to it. For the for I'm seeing two things. One, people desperately wanting to get back to business as usual because that was their comfort zone, and that is the world they knew. So never mind if it was broken. At least it was a broken known world. A known devil is better than an unknown one kind of situation. So they want to get back to that known devil. The other is where people are talking of a new normal, which really again bothers me a lot because when I say new normal, I'm accepting that what came before was normal, which is it? Which isn't it? 26 people, individuals in the world held more wealth than the bottom. That just cannot happen. That cannot happen. And I think what we are seeing is a non-resilient, fragile world faced with a pandemic just falling apart.
Mhm.
And the pandemic highlighting, underscoring all the fractures, fissures, fragility that existed, that we had papered over, glossed over with the glitters of malls and shopping and consumerism, and just didn't want to see, while the answer was always going in the wind. And I think we are in this liminal space, which is full of possibility, potential, but we have to give ourselves permission to embrace this liminality and stay in this and ask those questions which can really evoke in us those responses that will help us co-create.
Sh- Shahana, you have
That
such
makes sense.
a breadth and depth, and I always love listening to you, if you will. So I definitely appreciate it. I wanna kind of ask sort of. I want to share two phrases or two thoughts, if you will, and then kind of see how you bring them together or how you sort of dissect them and work with them. There's, as you said, people are finding each other. Kind of, we're discovering each other across the landscape. I've often challenged myself to say, when I observe something, am I seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary? Am I observing Shahana discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary? So that's one sort of thought. And the other thought that actually just came up a number of weeks back, very vividly. I used the phraseology, I've never really accepted a normal. It's always been the absence of a normal, because that's continuous growth and continuous evolution. Sort of that thought, and then the extraordinary in the ordinary. I'd love to get your thoughts on how those things strike you, those concepts and those thoughts.
Beautiful, Sai. And I think I heard one of your conversations where you spoke about abnormal as being absence of normal, and that really stayed with me. And now that you're repeating it, I love that because, and what you said, the extraordinary in the ordinary. And I think the pandemic is showing us that, what we have taken as quote unquote ordinary, the commonplace. And I'm going to talk about it from a couple of lenses. One is the commonplace so called work that we took for granted, like the grocery store keeper, the newspaper delivery, the milkman, the shopkeepers, the nurses, the doctors, the healthcare workers, the paramedics. We just took them for granted, the teachers, the people who make this society run. They are doing the work of what high tech couldn't do, big pharma couldn't do, big oil couldn't do. All the places we poured our money into have miserably failed us during this pandemic. But high touch and compassion is guiding the way. And these are the people who are in the front line, risking their lives, leaving their families behind. So the ordinary has definitely become extraordinary. Today, I do not take a full shelf at my corner grocery store for granted at all. Someone is bringing those things. Someone is stocking that shelf, but I can go and buy it and keep my regular routine running. So the ordinary has definitely become extraordinary. The other aspect is, I guess, we had completely forgotten that while the boundaries that we have created across nations and countries and all of those are man-made, the planet wasn't created with boundaries. The seas and the mountains and the land, everything belongs to everyone on this planet, including the birds and the bees and the little flies that we think are bugs, but they are as much a part of this planet as we are. And I think what is happening is this pandemic, one of the biggest lessons it is teaching us is our ineradicable interconnection. And if we do not learn this lesson now, I don't know when we ever will. It is just showing us how interconnected we are and how deeply that interconnection runs with every sentient being on the planet. So yes, the extraordinary and the ordinary coexist completely. And coming to how this connects with the abnormal and the normal, what we took for normal for decades, I think ever since the Industrial Revolution, I'm not going beyond that, but ever since the Industrial Revolution, is this urge to control the planet, is this urge to control nature, is this, and if I may say, not meaning to offend, and I do not like binary at all, because I think again binaries are false. But it has been exclusively driven by what the world terms very masculine urges of competition and control and aggression. And that's where I think the abnormal started seeping into the into our being, where we forgot what is it to be human beings. I'm not saying feminine values and masculine. I do not like that. Just human values. Human values, connection, courage, curiosity, compassion. Or all these became like secondary. These became something we can do without, and very non-human. Very I wouldn't they were almost like imposed values of a few people wanting to control the world and using the rest of the human population as their cogs, as their resources in their drive to control the world. And we fell in line with a few wrong kinds of devices. And that is where the abnormal seeped in and
Yeah.
distorted our debate, our connection.
Shahana, you're reading my mind because very honestly, I wanted to, because my next thought became, if you will, and around control. And there's two thoughts that I want to sort of put out there and kind of explore together. One of them, and I'm gonna share both of them, and then kind of have you sort of engage on both of them. One of them is I love what you said about the feminine and the masculine, and the way that I've experienced it in everyday life, business, professional, personal. The masculine and the feminine energies coming together create wholeness. If you discount any energy, then the wholeness breaks down. So I appreciate that I appreciate the wholeness factor, that we can't simply default to habit, if you will, saying I'm feminine or I'm masculine or what have you, but rather the wholeness aspect. So that's one sort of thought. Let me also put this one, because it connects, if you will, and it goes back to the word control. If we look at our egos, and the manifestation of ego becomes then control, and then we take that control and it manifests as aggression. The conflict is all around us in nature. So conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's aggression that degrades it. So ego, then we have the manifestation of control. Then we want predictability of the uncertainty of everything, which goes all the way back to the normal, abnormal, all those aspects. So as you look at that aspect of ego and control and the way that you're describing it, we may not have another chance, respectfully, as a human race, to learn from our mistakes. What guidance, and I'll phrase, so sort of those thoughts, and respectfully, I apologize for being a little bit long-winded. What guidance would you offer people today in any leadership role from wherever, across the organizations, across the world, and we all lead from our different vantage points, but what guidance would you offer them, Sahana?
Thank you, sir. But I think it's guidance that, as much as I offer up, it's also a guidance that I'm, or rather, uh, suggestion that I'm also giving myself. Uh, it's very easy to say in one single sentence, leave your ego behind. And, we keep saying that to each other, to ourselves. I think that's a kind of a facile way of treating it, of just walking away from a very human tendency to not only cling on to our ego, but to cling on to what gives us comfort, what makes me feel valued and worthwhile in my own eyes, and in my, and I think the way I perceive others. First, I want others to perceive me. So I'm in this mode of pretending, and constantly in this mode of, uh, we we all are, I guess, when we are ego driven, trying to be someone we are not, because we want approval, we want adulation, we want a claim, or what, something, we want something. And what I think where we have arrived today has been a matter of a couple of, three, four, intersection of three, four things. Our ego, our choices, our wanting to control the the world around us so that it falls in line with what I want, what we want, rather than uh, deep diving, or rather than staying with where it's taking me. I want control. I want certain outcomes predefined in my mind, which I think will make me happy, but I don't know. So I think that whole notion of trying to control has come from part fear,
Mm-hmm.
part wanting to stay powerful, not wanting to be vulnerable, not wanting to be, seen in all our, with all our, warts and all. Just want, so these human tendencies have also somewhere become bloated, in the sense where it could have been, okay, if I have okay, I'm trying to control something, and I have a little laugh at myself, and if I can be a little, if I can bring in humor, see myself as a little more lightly, not take myself so seriously, not, tread with a little more lightness of being, then I think it becomes easier. We take ourselves way too seriously as a species, as that apex species.
Mm-hmm.
We are not. We are part of the ecosystem just as much as the tiger, the elephant, the birds, the bees, the flower is. We are just another part. And I guess what distinguishes us is that we are conscious in this. We can think, we can reflect, we can observe, we can turn the lens back on our own actions. So maybe we are the universe's consciousness. And maybe that is what the universe is asking us to become, to drop control, to observe, to stay with this uncertainty. And we cannot stay with the uncertainty if we are still ego driven. So, yeah, observe your own ego and then keep it aside. Kind of, let ourselves become a little more uh, compassionate and lighter towards ourselves, and see how we can tread this planet with more gently, with more tenderly, more in harmony with the flow of life rather than constantly fighting against it and wanting things we cannot have and power and control. And I think that'll also make for a more abundant and joyful and um, a more fulfilling way of living. Kind of long-winded, but it that makes
Most definitely, very eloquently expressed, as always. And there's three things that I think emerge, and I know I know these are very close to you and I, and just even the conversations, the history that we've had, and the writing that we've done, and the experiences that we've that have manifested for us. Identity becomes the central question, and in many ways, because people think, well, I have to express my identity through ego, and the reality is you don't. You can have an identity. It's a struggle of identity, but you don't have to express it through ego. Embrace the uncertainty, and we have to. You really respectfully can only, and I think you and I are saying it very, very deliberately. You could really only embrace the uncertainty if you retain identity but let go of ego.
yeah,
Two key things there. And then the other thing I want to just mention, and then please feel free to comment on it, is you referenced definitely the abundance versus a scarcity mentality. So crucial in how all of that manifests.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's this scarcity mentality. It is coupled with, of course, I'm not even getting into the political, economic, social, all those nexus. But when I say scarcity mentality, and if that scarcity mentality exists in the powerful and the privileged, then that's dangerous because they have power and the privilege to, driven by their own ego and the scarcity and the fear. Because I think whenever you're
Yep.
grabbing more than you need all the time and nothing ever satisfies you. There must be something very, very insecure within.
Yes.
There must be something very fear driven within that is making you just grab, 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 and hoard, hoard, hoard. When you don't, I mean, never in your lifetime will you ever need that much of wealth and yachts and whatever else you have, and the Mac mansions and whatever. I don't even know. But I think it's almost like the inside is so hollow and so fearful that they need to bloat up on the outside to feel satisfied, and they're never satisfied. However, that scarcity mentality means 1% of the world's population is hoarding wealth, which is not going into the well being of the rest 99% in terms of.
We lost her sound, Shahana. Oh,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
no,
Sorry
there we
about
go.
that.
Oh, but all good. Yep.
Yeah, so 1% of that population hoards at the deprivation and the dispossession, disenfranchisement of the rest of the 99%, which makes for a fragile world. Because it's like, if think of a rainforest, which is in beautiful harmony and which is completely in sync in spite of its immense diversity, immense complexity. Because no one plant is saying, I want all the sunshine and I want all the nutrients and I want all the nitrogen in the soil and whatever else I need is only mine because I'm the tallest and the biggest and powerful, most powerful plant in the forest. No one is saying that, right? Everything is working in beautiful harmony, and that one big, fat, tall plant is home to hundreds and thousands of species of insects and birds and butterflies and other vines and creepers, and it's just a happy, beautiful place. What we are through our scarcity is trying to do, and that's what I'm very fearful of, is we are turning this beautiful, colorful, beautiful planet into a monochromatic, a dull, uh, I don't know, a planet driven by just a few for the privilege of just a few, and finance for the sake of finance, which has no connection with rest of the well-being of the whole planet and anyone else. So I think that's what scarcity does.
And I know that gosh, we could have a conversation forever. I want to just
Right now.
a few more thoughts, and then I really want to ask both of us a very, very deliberate question, which I think we want to talk into a bit and explore a little bit. Um, our, our fear of as the COVID crisis hit, and I've shared it with you. I've personally dealt with death on very intimately on 3 occasions, and that has allowed me to deal with that fear in a very, very particular way. And a lot of people haven't necessarily dealt with that fear of death. And if one is able to overcome the fear of death, then it really becomes, and sometimes it's called ego death, where it changes your point of view. So I really, really appreciate the way you're describing all those things. The question that I have for both of us, and many people will listen to this and say, well, Sai and Shahana don't live in the real world. They don't live in reality. They don't live in that.
I've been
And
hearing that forever.
yes, and and the way that I have addressed it is, and I'm really, really interested in your perspective, but forgive me for sharing first, if you will, but let me just sort of share this with you. As I've gotten the question, I always tell them everything I'm describing is very much what I practice. And if you look at my track record, there's demonstrable successes that I have helped others achieve, that I've contributed to others achieving it. Not me doing it, but rather them doing it. So what we are saying works in the real world, for lack of better words. I would love your thoughts on kind of, as you receive those kinds of questions, what's your response to that? And please.
Again, a great question. I think, especially after COVID hit the world, and whenever I've thought about or received, like the questions, like you said, does it mean? What are you doing? So, it's does it even make sense? My response to myself and to others, and even in my writing, have been that living differently is the only thing that makes sense. Because living the way we have for so long, for decades, for hundreds of years, have brought us here. So evidently something was very, very wrong. And if we continue doing that, it's almost like committing planetary hierarchy. Knowingly doing what I know is harmful for me is no sign of intelligence. And I would like to use Jiddu Krishnamurti's quote here, which says, I refuse to adjust to a profoundly sick society because that's not a sign of good health. So, yes, I think rethinking how we have lived so far, rethinking our choices, and I'm not only saying this as individuals or even as communities or collectives, I'm saying this at a society level, at policy level, at political level, at economics level. We have to rethink everything from scratch that no longer serves us. And hospice, so, and we can always be grateful for what has served us for so long, helped us to create that what we have and where we are in the 21st century. Zoom is, we couldn't have interacted 20 years before like this. So I'm grateful for that, conscious of that, acknowledge all of that. And I'm willing to welcome and embrace what worked, but we have to also let go of spice, what did not, and let go of all of that very maybe gently, yet thankfully that, okay, as a human species, we are able to self-correct, course-correct, and stop our plan from tilting over the brink into chaos. And, so hold space for the planet also to rejuvenate itself. Yeah.
Very, very well said. Very well said. And a lot, and what is intriguing, and I'll say it really respectfully, I try to listen very intimately, and there's a lot of there's a lot being said that isn't being said, if you will, in how we exchange and dialogue and converse. A lot of people are under the impression you have to destroy the old to create the new. And the reality is, exactly to your point, create the new, appreciate what got us here, but just create the new and it'll unfold very naturally, very, very naturally.
Yes. And I think we cannot forget what got us here, but we also have to be mindful of structures and policies that are outdated, that are obsolete, and we can gratefully let them go. We don't
Yes.
have to. So again, if we are going to bring anger into the mix, recrimination into the mix, we are playing by the old rule books. Let's not.
Yes.
Let's just be grateful for what brought us here. Thankfully, let go of our mistakes and think of those as adolescents of human species, and step into a more self, I would say, self-aware phase of humanity, a phase shift, if you will, maybe a shift in consciousness at a planetary level. And let's embrace that with joy, with curiosity, and just hold space for that and that learning that the planet is offering.
Very, very, as as always, as I've been saying, very, very well said. And taking the word has come up a few times, and it's worth emphasizing and perhaps, closing on the note. It's not a complexity view or a systems view. It's an ecosystem perspective, and that paradigm is one that we have not embraced, and now is more emerging than anything. As any thoughts on that before we close, Sahana?
It's beautiful, Sai. It's not systems view. It is ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think what you said a while back about wholeness is so tied to that. Because when we are fragmented inside, we are going to see everything around us in fragments. Even systems thinking can be fragmented. System one, system two, system three. No, it is ecosystem, and we are a part of this emerging ecosystem. And ecosystems, living ecosystems, have the capacity to regenerate, to bring themselves to wholeness again and again and again, in spite of the shocks. And like Taleb wrote in Anti-Fragility, it's what is anti-fragile is not something that can withstand shock, which becomes better because of the
Yep.
shocks. So maybe on that note, can we become better as a human species because of the shock of the pandemic and everything that came before, and everything that is currently accompanying the uprisings, the global, the miseries, those are shocks to the system, but can we become better because of that? Can we become more embracing of each other and ourselves and our own wholeness because of that? And see the whole planet and ourselves as part of an ecosystem, and no longer just an apex species trying to be in the driver's seat and pay.
As I've been saying, very, very well said and summarized. And this is truly a test of all of our anti-fragility, and that can we grow from this? And I know there's a lot of conversation in the space around anti-fragility. And I continue to emphasize, as Taleb indicated, it's a spectrum. It's not you're simply anti-fragile to everything and you're immortal, not at all. But rather there are degrees of shocks that we can sustain and grow from, and those that are too much. So I appreciate your time tremendously, and I know I've overtaken your time a bit, but I truly appreciate it. Your voice is needed in the world, Sahana.
Thank you, Sai. I loved our conversation, and I loved the space that you created with your questions and your presence and your listening that allowed me to say what was in my heart. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Likewise, thank you so much, and I do hope that we have this opportunity again. So thank you tremendously.
Absolutely. I look forward to our future interactions. Totally.
Likewise, thank you.